Ladies and gentlemen, it is 118th day of Russia's invasion and 9th years of war against Ukraine. On behalf of Ukraine Media Center, I welcome all the journalists telling the world about our fight for freedom. Right now we have with us Damien, Mahru from the International Legion for the defense of Ukraine. So what are the most recent updates you can share with us? Thank you so much.
I'd like to start this briefing by commenting some of the news that have been this morning about high officials of the Russian Federations commenting on foreigners. Let's use that catchword: foreigners fighting in Ukraine and who end up in captivity. I think both Mr. Lavrov and Mr. Peskov need to once again check their humanitarian law. Mr. Lavrov, I understand in his interview, was saying he's not interested in the Ukrainians' point of view about international law. He's only interested in international law itself. Well, I have a message to Mr. Lavrov. He can open Article 47 of the first additional protocol of the Geneva Conventions and read it, and then he will understand why we're not mercenaries. We're part of the Ukrainian armed forces. We receive the same salary as all Ukrainian servicemen. We follow the same disciplinary rules. We can be court-martialed, and on all points we are members of the Ukrainian armed forces, and therefore there is no objective argument of any kind to continue to assert that legionnaires are mercenaries or soldiers of fortune, as Mr. Peskov was saying this morning. That is a gross misrepresentation of international law, and clearly they're just putting their hands in front of their face and not reading the actual additional protocol that regulates this question under international law, as Mr. Lavrov was clearly trying to imply that he does. I'm afraid at this time, I know a lot of you will be interested in hearing about Alexander Druke and Ditai Hyun, two American citizens that have been, well, they're pictured in a video that has been released by Russian forces. I'm afraid at this time I can't confirm or deny whether they were in the International Legion. But I will say this: whatever their status was, they're entitled to treatment as prisoners of war at this stage, because in Article 4 of the Third Geneva Conventions there are a number of criteria that are called criteria for belligerency, which my understanding was that they were following. They were in uniform, carrying arms openly, and therefore should be entitled to prisoner of war status under these criteria, regardless of what their status at the time of their captivity was. I think this is an important legal argument that has to be made. I would also once again underline that if there are any doubts or any, let's say, objections to some particular individuals' prisoner of war status, then they are entitled under Article 5 of the Third Geneva Convention and Article 43, if I'm not mistaken, of the additional protocol. They're entitled to treatment as a prisoner of war until such time as their status has been determined by competent and impartial court, which means that if the Russian authorities have any objections to the prisoner of war status of these two American individuals, these should be taken in a competent court of law, which would allow the Ukrainian side also to present its arguments and any evidentiary base to the effect that these two should be considered prisoners of war. As far as I'm aware, no such judicial process has been started in Russia to determine the status of these two Americans, and until such process is completed, they are entitled to prisoner of war status regardless of whatever objections might be against them under Article 5 of the Third Geneva Convention. So once again, if Mr. Lavrov cares about international law, as he said to the BBC this morning, he should reopen the Geneva Conventions and recheck them. I think it's also very important to remind the Russian side of their obligations under Article 126 of the Third Geneva Convention to give access to prisoners of war to be visited by the International Committee of the Red Cross. As far as I'm aware, this has not been the case, and once again, I realize this might be somewhat useless and redundant, but once again, I would very much call on the Russian authorities to respect their obligations under this particular article of the Geneva Conventions. Moving on, I am aware that the Russian Foreign Ministry a few days ago published statistics of what they allege are the number of foreign fighters currently fighting in Ukraine, with an overview of how many have come, how many have been killed, how many have left or departed, and how many are left in the country. I will comment these statistics to say that the Russian disinformation machine has once again gone into a creative overdrive, and that those statistics are pure fantasy. I think I will quote one number from those tables. Apparently, according to the Russian Ministry of Defense, 214 Americans would have been killed since February 24th. In action in Ukraine, clearly, I think anyone who's following the situation knows that cannot be true. There have been certain cases of death that have been made public, but as you see, any one of these cases make frontline news all over the world. The families go out and speak to the press. I think if 214 Americans had died since the 24th of February, someone would have noticed. So those statistics are, once again, pure fantasy. This is the same a little bit as happened in the beginning of the war, when, following a particular bombing, the Russian general staff alleged that they had killed up to 200 foreign fighters, which clearly was untrue, once again. So I think we once again have to deal with a classic case of Russian disinformation, and that will be my comment as to these statistics. I've been asked by people at the front to also try and clarify sometimes the role that our legionnaires take on the front lines and the type of assignments that they have. It would be, I want to make that clear because, of course, the armed forces of Ukraine have functions that are of a military character, but we also perform functions that are more of a civilian character, and one of these functions is to evacuate civilians. I just wanted, for the fullness of the picture of what the International Legion does and what our legionnaires are, what kind of assignments our legionnaires are carrying out, that we do have legionnaires that are involved in evacuation operations, often in the area of operation where they're deployed, and I've heard several legionnaires mention that to me as one of the types of missions that makes them, let's say, has a very positive effect on them. They feel that on evacuation missions, the civilian population is incredibly grateful to them, and that's one of the jobs that our legionnaires are doing. We're here to defend Ukraine and to help the Ukrainian people, and some of these functions are less military and more of a civilian character. Then I will finish my introduction by, once again, and I think this will be a recurrent theme, reminding all of our Western friends and partners, international governments and civil society, that the weapons that are being delivered to Ukraine are very useful, are very necessary, but are not enough. And so I will repeat that probably every week. We need more heavy weaponry, we need more heavy artillery and long-distance rockets and anti-ship missiles and anti-aircraft defense system, multiple launch rocket systems. All of these are necessary. I know that in the last week since my last briefing, there's been announced further deliveries from the United States and other governments. Once again, on behalf of the International Legion, on behalf of the Ukrainian people, thank you very much for these. Keep them coming. It's still not enough, and we still have the Battle of the Donbass that is going on and claiming up to 150 lives a day of Ukrainian servicemen. Up until the balance of artillery power in the Donbass is brought into balance, this situation will continue, and I will continue to bring it up every time, because that is the only way we will manage to bring this war to a close. That's it from me. I will now take questions from the room, if anyone has any.
Let's take some questions from the floor. Any questions here? Let's start here.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm Valerie Hopkins from the New York Times, and I have a question actually that came from a colleague who's been mostly in Lysychansk the past 10 days or so, and he is interested in the status of the Legion fighters who are stuck in Severodonetsk. Can you comment anything about them, as he understands they're Australians and Americans?
Thanks for bringing this to me. I don't have any confirmed information as to the concrete question. We don't, as a rule, comment on the location of our units for operational security reasons. I can confirm that the International Legion has been present in Severodonetsk because it's part of the public record. There was a journalist that made a video with them about 10 days ago. At that time, that was true. As to the situation today, I'm afraid I don't have any more operational details for you. But what I will say is this. The situation in Severodonetsk is very delicate because the evacuation possibilities are limited, if not completely excluded in the current situation. We're very concerned, I think, like everyone in the Ukrainian armed forces, for the situation of all the fighters that are left in Severodonetsk, and quite worried that we might end up with a similar situation to what happened in Mariupol. Obviously, we're all following the situation directly and with a lot of concern. If there are indeed foreign fighters in general, or specifically legionnaires in the industrial area in Severodonetsk that are still there, then their fate will be decided more or less as the same fate as the rest of the Ukrainian servicemen there. And I think we all have to learn the lessons of Mariupol. We also all have to learn to doubt and take with skepticism any promises that are made by the Russian side, because we see that the promises that were made concerning the defenders of Mariupol and the fighters that were evacuated from Azovstal have not been followed and have not come to reality. So clearly the situation is very delicate. Like everyone, I think, in the Ukrainian armed forces, I'm very much hoping that this situation will be resolved, hopefully with an evacuation of all the fighters there into Ukrainian-controlled areas when the General Staff of the Ukrainian Armed Forces decide the time for this has come. In the meantime, I will repeat that Severodonetsk has not fallen. Fighting is ongoing. And of course, glory to all the defenders of the Donbass who are risking their lives every day there.
More questions?
Ірина Ододенко,
Ukrinform. Previously, you told that there were representatives of 55 countries who have joined the Legion. Are they joining actively? Do you see any changes in the dynamics depending on the situation in Donbass? Previously, you told that 55 countries were the countries from which members are joining the Legion. So, is there any changes in the dynamics of new people joining because of the developments in the war in Donbass?
No, so if I can answer in English, I think that would be easier. I've been asked this question several times in different formats. So, have the sham trials in the so-called DNR dissuaded people from joining? Are we seeing an effect on the flow of people coming in? And my answer is that most likely it hasn't. I think it's too early to tell from the actual numbers of arrivals, but it's quite logical that it wouldn't have an effect, and I'll tell you why. Because all of our legionnaires come, and they make this decision, it's a personal decision, and they make this decision in full knowledge of all the risks associated with that decision. They're coming to a country that is in a state of war to participate directly in the hostilities, and of course all the legionnaires understand that there is an important risk to their lives and other risks associated with those activities. And the fact that, so I've heard so many legionnaires tell to me that they do not trust the Russians in the least and would never allow for themselves to fall into captivity because they would expect the worst possible treatment from the Russian forces and would rather therefore end their lives rather than be captured. And that is a quite common attitude among our legionnaires. There is absolutely no confidence that the Russian forces would treat them humanely. And that is already factored in when they make the decisions to come and join the International Legion and participate directly in the war. And therefore I don't consider, or it seems logical to me, that any of these cases, whether we're talking about Alexander Druke or Andy Tayyun, or we're talking about the three that were put through a sham trial in the so-called DNR, I don't think any of these cases really changes the nature of the risk for these legionnaires, and it's nothing new to them. Obviously, it's concretely put in front of their eyes right now in the news cycle, but those are all risks that legionnaires have been aware of and have taken into account when they made the decision to come and fight, and therefore I don't believe that it will have an effect on our recruitment or on the amount of arrivals, simply because no one was really expecting anything else from the Russians.
Please.
Доброго дня.
Hello, I'm from Ukrinform. Can you please tell us what is the attitude to journalists in your legion, and is there any interaction with journalists? Do you help them in their work? And one more question here. Can you give any examples of interactions with the journalists?
We've been working actively with the press, not quite since the very beginning, but since March, roughly. We've been actively working with the press because obviously we understand that the role that is performed by media, and especially international media, in bringing to light some of what is happening during the war is absolutely fundamental, and we absolutely support the press in their attempts to bring information to the world stage as to what is happening on the ground. For operational security reasons, however, we do have some limitations in what we can do with the press. So, for example, the Legion has not had a policy of working with embedment or with any participation in the hostilities or on the front line. I don't think this is about to change very soon. What we have done is we've selected a number of speakers among our legionnaires who are authorized to talk to the press. I think up to this day there's been already something like 6 or 7 of them, and little by little we are opening for more interviews. Actually, this is a very good opportunity for me to announce that there is there will be an opportunity in Kharkiv this Friday to interview a Flemish Belgium and a German legionnaire. So anyone who is interested in having interviews with these 2 legionnaires in Kharkiv on Friday, please do get in touch. The details will be finalized very soon, but there will be that opportunity. So this is the type of work that we can do with the press. We do give access to certain legionnaires to talk about their life on the front, to talk about their motivations for being there. But unfortunately, anything that touches on operational security, we can't give access to the press for. And I hope very professional members of the press corps here represented will understand, will have some understanding for the reasons why we do that.
And we'll be happy to distribute information about the Friday events among our subscribers through our Telegram channels and other means of communication.
Sure, thank you.
Please.
Yeah, I'm interested in to be in Kharkiv on Friday. I'll be there. My name is Remus Cherna. I'm from Newsweek, Romania. You said that the Russians, the numbers provided by Russians are pure fantasy. Can you comment, please, their numbers regarding the presence of about 500 volunteers from Romania? Is it possible to comment something on it? Is it also fantasy or not? And I have a second question after you respond to this.
Okay, so unfortunately we have a policy not to comment on the numbers of our fighters, and that is the case regardless of nationality, regardless of whether we're talking about people who've arrived, people who've left. We just don't comment on these numbers.
Okay.
My comment regarding Fantasyland was connected to the numbers there of death, or in Russian уничтожено, destroyed servicemen that they put in the statistics, which has absolutely no connection to reality.
Okay, and my second question.
Servicemen or servicewomen from Romania?
I can confirm we have some people from Romania. I'm afraid I can't say the number.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question is, what would you say to people from Romania and other countries to join to the Legion?
I would say come and join. We need more people. We need brave, experienced people who have the capacity and the will to help the Ukrainian people defeat this fascist invasion. And of course, if you're in Romania or in any other country and you're watching this and you have experience, you know how to handle a gun and you've been on the battlefield before, then by all means go to our website, fightforua.org, send your application to your nearest Ukrainian embassy and come and join the Legion. Absolutely.
Steve Klein with Pacific Rex. You said you do not anticipate a change of policy with regarding press embeds with the Legion, but other groups in the military are allowing that. What's the logic for that? And do you think we'd do a better job telling the world about your message and what you're doing if we had better access?
I understand. You know, the matters of press policy is something that is coordinated with various competent instances inside the armed forces and the Ministry of Defense. So I am saying that I'm not expecting a change of policy because I think that's the most realistic thing. I do understand that the better access we give you, the more you can tell your readers and show to your viewers, and the better the coverage will be, and I totally understand that. As you might be aware, press policy in the Ukrainian armed forces works like this, that the commander of the unit in question should be involved in making that decision. I know that some army units in the Ukrainian military have allowed for embedments, but the units that we have are not willing to work in this direction. So I have to work around the frame that I'm given. In terms of embedment, as you realize, this does create, well, it does have a number of specificities and difficulties in both how it's organized and which risks are associated with that. And I, of course, respect the decision of the relevant commanders, and it's not for me to challenge that.
More questions on the floor, please.
Good day. Vitaly Stankevich, Deutsche Welle. I have a question about the foreign soldiers who've been prosecuted in so-called Donetsk Republic. Is there any assistance can be provided for them now? Is there any information how they've been treated? And is there a possibility for a prisoner swap at this moment? Thank you.
I'm afraid I'm not the right person to answer this question because I'm not involved in any of the negotiations that I very much assume are ongoing towards a prisoner swap. For the sake of the record, I should mention that these three were not legionnaires. They were all under contracts with various army units for quite a long period of time before the start of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia since this February. They, as far as I understand, they all had between 1 and 5 years of service in the Ukrainian armed forces before that, so they were not legionnaires. But as I said last time at my last briefing, of course their case is very interesting for us because it is the first such cases. I'd like to call on the Russian proxies once again to give access to the International Committee of the Red Cross to visit these prisoners of war, as they must under Article 126 of the Third Geneva Convention. I note that this has not been the case yet, even though I've made the similar appeal last week. So I guess this is one of these recurrent themes that I'm going to have to repeat over and over again. All prisoners of war are entitled to have visits by an impartial observer under the Geneva Convention. The competent organ for this is the International Committee of the Red Cross, and it's very important that this happens. So I'm afraid I don't have any new information as to their welfare and the way they're being treated. I heard that one of the three's lawyers said to Russian-speaking media that he had heard from his clients that they were being treated humanely. I don't know if that is the case. It would be very much. It would be, of course, very welcome if we could receive an independent confirmation of that. I'd like to take this opportunity also to remind everyone that we still have a legionnaire who is in captivity. His name is Andrew Hill. He's a British national, and he was captured a month and a half ago on the Southern Front. We have no information as to his welfare or his whereabouts. Our understanding from various media reports is that he's also located in the territory of the so-called Donetsk People's Republic, and we would call on the Russian authorities and their proxies to give us a proof that he's alive and information about his welfare. Thank you.
More questions? My last question will be this: how has the Legion changed since the time when it was created?
Well, it's been an eventful 4 months. It's soon going to be 4 months for everyone. As you know, the International Legion was created from scratch at the beginning of the war, and clearly things have changed over the last 4 months. I think we are in a better place today than we were at the very beginning of the war in terms of both our organization, our effectiveness as a combat unit. I think that little by little we're seeing some of the challenges that were at the beginning being resolved, and obviously that's always welcome. I think that we've already proven over the past 4 months the usefulness of the International Legion on the battlefield. As you will know, the International Legion was involved both in the liberation of Irpin and Bucha, has been involved in combat in Severodonetsk, and I think little by little we're getting to prove our usefulness in military terms. So I think things are, on the whole, moving in the right direction. Obviously, there's a lot more still to be done, and clearly, on the battlefield and militarily speaking, we have some heavy months ahead of us. I think no one can say the contrary, that we have to be prepared for some very intense fighting in the weeks and months to come. And of course, the International Legion will continue to be there, shoulder by shoulder, with the Ukrainian servicemen as part of the armed forces to liberate Ukraine from the invaders.
Damien Mahru, spokesman for the International Legion for the Defense of Ukraine. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And this completes our program for today. Stand with Ukraine.
Thank you.